Um, okay. So let's just start with the few of us that are here. A very good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Also, thank you for joining us today. It's been a very well. I won't say it's been a very good day full of surprises because I'll say not many of us expected, and will I say expected, the cost cap um decisions to be any different, you know. So Red Bull has been fined 7 million, um as well as um 10% off their wind tunnel time, so which limits it to 25 runs per week rather than 28. So yeah, personally, um I would say I don't I yes, they've broken the rule, and then they are saying okay, they broke the rule by about 400 and something thousand dollars, but still, as Toto said, this is a marginal sport, so I believe whether you spend additional $10, $50 or whatever amount, there's almost or possibly a performance gain to be achieved. So regardless, you are still guilty, so it's just like someone says, oh, if you steal and then probably you do, I don't know, probably I don't want to say kill someone, but yeah, they are still all sin in it. So yeah, it's still they still broke the rule, and then Aston Martin as well. Aston Martin enough to be left out because I saw something I saw something very interesting that broke the cost cap for Aston Martin, which I guess we'll discuss when some of us when the rest of us coming. But yeah, I don't know. I just want you guys to share your thoughts on what you on probably let's say what you on your expectation of, or rather on your view of the penalty awarded to Red Bull. So yeah, okay. So Andrew, do you want to go first because you were here? Then Polaris, please.
Yeah, as you know, how we spoke in the different spaces. I was expecting more, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm not really surprised with the slap on the wrist that they got, because in the end, the $7 million fine doesn't affect their cost cap. They are. I know that nobody in that Red Bull facility is poor. So $7 million in regards to the company of Red Bull, that's no big deal. And the 10% less time in the wind tunnel and all that, don't really think that makes a massive difference in regards to where they're right now. Seeing that, I mean, everyone who watched FP1 saw the performance gain since Bahrain graph up to U.S. Grand Prix, and there being what point what it was a eight thousandths or something like that to Ferrari. It's very marginal. They're basically getting a slap on the wrist for breaking the cost cap, and like you said before, Toto said, something that seems marginal is a big deal in Formula One, because a tenth a lap, that makes a difference, But I don't, I'm not really surprised with what how they got away with that with you know, very minimal penalty. It's kind of expected at this point. But the thing that just kind of just rubs me the wrong way in regards to the whole thing is how Christian is like trying to still feel like he's the victim here and asking for apologies because why are people defaming us and why are people saying this and that? Well, they weren't wrong. They were right. You guys cheated essentially. You guys didn't follow the rules and you benefited from it. And they wanted to make it seem like they did nothing wrong, and it's just a matter of like I don't know if it's bad math or something, but you benefited from breaking a rule and you need to pay a penalty, and you shouldn't be begging for an apology from the paddock because you did something wrong. That's not right. But I honestly I know that they weren't going to take away Max's championship. Um, I just knew that wasn't going to happen. They were going to take away this championship or the last championship from last year. As a Mercedes fan, I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool if it happened. But then Mercedes didn't even want to win the title off of the track because they're the one who pulled their own protest. And even though the FIA had admitted that they did wrong, it, it's just it's just kind of obscure. And for anybody who's a fan of the sport and not really like a fan of specific teams and stuff like that, it's kind of like a joke. They're not really taking anything seriously or serious enough, I should say. And what Ross Brawn said in 2019 or something like that was equally as big of a joke. And it's very hard to take this sport seriously when it comes to certain things like this. And it's becoming kind of like a clown show for Netflix. I'm not gonna sit here and say that Netflix Drive to Survive is bad. Last season was bad, but overall it's a good show. But hey, if this is what they need to do to make an interesting storyline, for the next year and the years to come after the battle on track was basically decided after the summer break, they got to do what they got to do. But this it was not what anybody was probably expecting in regards to like an actual penalty. But yeah, that's all I got to say.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I think there's when I read the FI statement today, you know, for me, there were some parts of the statement which I will highlight now, and then okay, but I'll probably put it up in a bit, but there were some part of the statements that just got me thinking that is this really a professional organization or it's a charity organization? Like what's going on here? So I would okay. I think that's the second paragraph where it says Red Bull Racing was found to be in breach. However, the cost cap administration recognized that Red Bull Racing had acted cooperatively throughout the review process and has sought to provide additional information. Is Red Bull a CI? Is Red Bull a criminal informant? Which one is acting cooperatively? I don't understand. I don't understand. Like,
You know what it
like,
is?
like
It,
it. Don't,
there's actually a loophole in the regulations. We were talking on
I'm not.
live yesterday that if you cooperate, you get a lesser penalty. So that's what they're addressing.
No, but it doesn't just make sense. Okay, moving on. And has sought to provide additional information and evidence when requested in a timely manner. Okay, that's this is the first year of the full application of the financial regulation, and there is no accusation or evidence that Red Bull Racing has sought at any time to act in bad faith, dishonestly, or in fraudulent manner. Please let me ask someone a question here. When they catch you doing something evil, do you always mean to do it? Let, no one ever means to do, and no one that is committing a crime ever means to do it when the police catches them. You understand? So I don't understand this. Okay, yeah, they did not mean to do it. Oh, okay. It was a mistake. Like it for me. Yeah, I'm just I'm not even trying to bash Red Bull. I'm looking at the FIA as what sort of organization, or rather professional organization, will even release this kind of statement. Okay, they didn't act in bad faith, so hence why in the circumstances they offered them an accepted breach agreement. For me, the accepted breach agreement seems to be like, okay, there's like there seems to be something you guys haven't concealing, because if they've if you have said, okay, it's 400 and something, whatever they spent, 400 and something thousand that they've spent, yeah, then let just give it to them. Whatever is in the regulation, give them the punishment, and then let's move on. That should have been the case, not all this long process of, okay, they've acted in good faith. The Aston Martin misbehave, you know. So yeah, Polaris, sorry for keeping you waiting. Please go ahead.
No problem, mate. You raised some good points there. From what I understand, Aston Martin's penalty seems to come from just incompetence on their end, really, with regards to filing stuff. I believe Williams had a smaller slap on the wrist last year as well, because they had some issues bringing some paperwork on time. The Red Bull penalty is interesting because 10% of CFD is fairly significant over the course of a year, but the fact that the 7 million can be paid separately from the team's budget, I thought was a bit pointless, because this is a team run by billionaires. Like 7 million is just a rounding error on their tax returns at the end of the year. So had the FIA said, okay, I don't know, we're going to take 5 or 6 million out of the 145 the team has to use for the year, and that probably would have been a bit more meaningful and impactful. I've never been the biggest fan of Christian. I will say that, quite frankly. But one thing that really got on my nerves was when Christian tried to play the kids card, when he brought up the fact that apparently the kids of employees and such are being bullied in school and what have you. And don't get me wrong, I do not condone bullying. And if bullying is happening, there are processes within the school that you can use to deal with it. But to try and say that someone calling into question the way you went about operating your team cannot be done because it's somehow indirectly getting people's kids bullied was a bit ridiculous, really. But I agree with what Andrew said earlier. In many respects, the FIA, through many decisions, have sort of made F1 feel a bit more like a reality show that's designed to sell merch and get views on Netflix and such. And it's quite unfortunate on that regard. I hope some of the teams are able to kick up a bit of a fuss so we can see if something more comes out of this. Because I remember Haas and Frederick Vasseur from Alfa Romeo said it cost about $4 million during the year to essentially build the original car concept that he developed. So to go over by 1.8, which quite frankly wasn't all catering, unless I don't know, they're serving some endangered species that we've not heard of in the Red Bull catering area. So to go over by 1.8, that's enough money for you to be in the position to essentially turn around the car if you make a fundamental mistake. Something that someone like Alfa Romeo, who was screwed over by the weight increase because they reduced the wheelbase to make the car lighter, they wouldn't have had the luxury to do that kind of thing, where it's very much the regulations have been tweaked. Your car is kind of screwed, but you have to stick with it because you're in a cost cut. But at the same time, teams like Red Bull are essentially moving them pounds here and there to create that extra revenue for them. So it's a bit of a shame, really, to conclude the way they went about it. I wish that 7 million actually came out of the development budget, because telling company owned by a bunch of billionaires to pay a £7 million fine is nothing, really.
Thank you very much, Polaris. Ms. Catro, do you want to go ahead?
Christian Horner is very disingenuous and he gets on my bloody nerves. You know, I can't stand him. But when I was reading what he said in the press conference, I was just like, this man, there's no end to his nonsense. So he said, hang on. Speaking in the press conference, Christian Horner said, I hear people say it's not a severe penalty, but 10% less wind time and other aerodynamic tools is a draconian penalty that can cost 0.25 seconds to zero point 0.5 seconds a lap, and it will have an impact on our ability to perform on track next year. He said, I stand by the statement that there was zero benefit, not one penny of the overspend was spent on the performance of the car. Did we see any on track performance? No, we didn't. And there are things that we could have done better from an accounting perspective. Of course, there are lessons that could have been learned, and not just on our side. I think on all sides. I'm also astounded that no other teams have found themselves in this position, but good for them that they fully complied. Is he taking the effing piss? Like, even when you're guilty, they have the evidence. You pleaded guilty. Why are you still out here trying fraff in our ears? Why are you still up here trying to peddle lies? You did it. It wasn't catering. Why are you still lying? He makes me want to shake him. Like, come on. I just don't. It's like they will never ever admit to anything that they ever did wrong. But I don't even blame Red Bull. I blame the FIA because they cultivated this monster. And the monster will out-monster them. Let them carry on.
Ridwan, please go ahead.
So good evening, everyone. Good evening. So like I've been listening to this for some time now, and actually I agree to everything to everyone has been saying. It's fair, like everyone, like yes, Red Bull did cheat. Yeah, they cheated, and giving them their punishments just exactly as we want. And I think the punishment is fair because we at Red Bull we breached just 0.37% of the budget cap. That's just what we did. And when the FIA released the statement that Red Bull breached the cost cap, we Red Bull fans, we said no, that they didn't. I personally, I said we didn't. That we did not break it. We all like that time. We all said we are going to believe the FIA. Now the FIA came out and said and talked about that they misinterpreted the rules about catering, redundancy fee, and unused parts. I think we should also believe that also. So based on the last speaker that said that they didn't use that on catering, I think we should believe what the FIA puts out because that's what we are going to believe. So, and the thing is that
bunch of liars.
Okay, we actually believe the FIA, so we are going to believe the FIA because that's what they put. That's the article that they put out. That's a statement. We are going to believe them. So, because actually when the FIA came out and said that the other 7 teams did not breach, Williams and Aston Martin did have procedural breach. We all believe the FIA. When it comes to Red Bull, the FIA released that it's because of catering, unused parts, and redundancy fee. We actually should believe the FIA. So we have to believe the governing board. That's just it. And the 7 million. The thing about this thing is that from the onset, maybe they should have reviewed it better because it's just the procedure. You have to go. It's either you accept the accepted bridge association or I don't know that ABA stuff, or you carry it to another, like you go for maybe an appeal. And Red Bull said that if they go further than that they are wary of an harsher penalty, so they have to take this penalty because that's just the procedure, that's the policy. You have to negotiate with the FIA, and maybe that's where they should have actually reviewed the stuff that yes, there should nothing be like a major breach, even if you breach $0.01, that there shouldn't be any kind of breach. Like there shouldn't be any kind of major offense or minor offense. That yes, this is what you did. Many people are saying like the 1.8 million. Actually, in a business you have you can be guaranteed, or like you have the privilege of having tax credits, and based on the tax credits that Red Bull has, it is just a breach of $400,000, and that's just the breach alone. Like if you say it is like it's also included in car performance, we actually don't know. Therefore, did not put that out. But exactly what they put out is that yes, that is based on all those stuff that they listed. And the 10% wind tunnel, the thing is just that people might think 10% reduction of wind tunnel is a small thing. Actually, it is not a small thing. I'm not saying it might affect Red Bull greatly, but it is because normally they are genius. Like all these engineers are genius. So, but what people has written about this 10% reduction of wind tunnel, and I think see something. I'm not sure. So like it will surely affect Red Bull. That's just it. And now I think that with Red Bull winning the constructors this year, they already have almost like 30% cut. That's almost like 63% for next season alone. You can see that there's no how it will surely affect them. But let's see. It is Adrian Newey and his gangs that will actually develop the car. But that's just exactly what I said since the cost cap saga began. That let them just this what happened. This what happened. I'm even happy like they even came out and said that this was Red Bull did, and these are the parts that they did some bad things, and these are the parts something like that. That all the 30 something that they misinterpreted. So that's just it. And for now, Red Bull has accepted the punishment. But if people think the punishment is not that harsh, for me, it is harsh. So like it's not that like it is small. Don't let me use the word harsh. Like it is small. I think the punishment is fair to that. And what Christian said about like the punishment, like he has been running this sport for almost like 18 years now. For almost like I think 19 will be like his 19 year will be next year. For like he knew what a wind tunnel is, and he knows about this sport. So it is very like it is fair. That's what a person that breach, like we that breach the cost cap, that is fair. That's just what I want to say. Thank you.
Ridwan, as you say, we, because in terms of this breaches, some of the breaches, when I out of the 13, I wonder why you have bonuses included. Because should employee bonus be included? You see, non-F1 activities. So all those ones that all those flying up and down that they are doing with all these drivers is not part of is part of the budget cap. It should not be included. So, anyways, yeah, we're also looking at Aston Martin as well. So we can compare both, so not just Ridwan. So yeah, we've got Salim. Salim, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, host. Good evening to everyone. Well, I think before I start, I was even like, I was surprised that you put the time for this space right now, because I know like we usually have a tendency to stay here for a lot of hours. So I don't know how we're going to watch FP2, Sha, with what is going on here. So yeah,
Let me
about
quickly answer your question, because I knew someone was
yeah.
going to ask that. So obviously, because it's a free practice, there's not much action other than numbers. So if the space eventually runs through, then I guess everyone will watch FP2 in their comfort. But I guess
All
the
right,
thing is we'll focus on the topic at hand. Yeah. Thank you.
all right, no problem. So yeah, talking about the verdict of the FIA, well, we have waited and waited, and well, they've come to an agreement with Red Bull, and Red Bull have finally agreed to the fact that they actually breached slash cheated, which we all knew they did. That's one. Two, like people talking about the severity of well, the punishment that was given to Red Bull. Well, I expected something like 15% to be honest, but 10% fine. It's going to affect them, but the question for me is like, to what extent would it really affect Red Bull? Because they have gained a lasting advantage. That is one, and two, um, like this punishment, would it serve as a deterrent for other teams in the future to not do something like that? Because, as I said, I think the last time I was here, I said something that um, Mercedes, for instance, can afford to pay any amount of money, reasonable, of course, amount of money in terms of fines, right? In the world, any amount of money they can afford to pay that. So if a team like Red Bull that like has endorsements worth hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Well, just $7 million fine, and it's not even from the budget itself, right? So I mean, what's to stop Mercedes or Ferrari from doing something similar? That is my concern, because I think today the integrity of the sport is really in question. Every like genuine Formula One fan that I know, right, has been skeptical of like the way FIA or the FIA leadership actually is running the FIA, and what it means and how it speaks of the spirit of the sport moving forward. So yeah, and I think finally I wanted to say I was never actually expecting the FIA to actually give back the championship to Hamilton and Mercedes. Yeah, I was never expecting that, and actually I wouldn't have wanted that. Yeah, because at Mercedes, when we win, we actually win. And I think even Hamilton said that in an interview with Sky Sports, I think yesterday or today, I'm not sure. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Salim. Okay, Salim, to answer one of your questions, which was what stops Ferrari and Mercedes from breaking the budget cap. I believe Sky Sports asked Toto this evening, and his response was reputation. You know that no one wants in summary, no one wants a damaged reputation or a stained reputation. You know, so I think
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, let me just cut in. You said no one wants a damaged or stained reputation, but like, to be honest, man, when you look back in history, do we really like remember how Schumacher won all his titles? Right? No, nobody does. Schumacher, when you look at how he drove, his driving style, he was not as clean as someone like Hamilton. Hamilton is a very clean driver, right? So, and in terms of fairness, Schumacher would play psychological tricks on his rivals, on his even on his teammate, especially on his teammate, right? But when we look back in history, we just go, "Wow, Schumacher, what a legend!" And we all love him, right? It's human nature. So I think like in a couple of years, will it really matter? We'll just remember the Max Verstappen days of dominance, and people would really forget about like the scandal slash cheating of Red Bull. Yeah, thank you.
Well, anyway, times change, but who knows? Okay, yeah, Andrew. Then Imade, please. Thank you.
I don't think anyone's just gonna forget like 2021, especially like Mercedes fans. It's that's kind of like a big deal, breaking the world drivers champion record. That's a big deal, especially when this is the most successful driver of all time, attempting to take that record. um, People don't really, they don't really know what Michael Schumacher was doing because they weren't really paying attention to the sport. They just seen the red cars winning. That's cool. Red cars coming in 1 and 2 every race. That's all fine and cool. But like, they don't really look into the races. They didn't really see what happened and like. Yeah, and like he did some terrorist actions on some of his races before, like taking out some his championship contenders and all that. It's just they don't really look back because it's. I mean, that was like what, well over it's almost 20 years since that he's last won his last title. They don't really look back and to see like what's really what really transpired in those races, or they just see that they won the race, but some people, people who pay attention to sport, that they know, everything that's going on. Like people remember Spygate in 2007 or something like that, and I didn't forget about it. I mean, that's a big deal. Like they completely wiped out every single point that they had as a constructor from McLaren, and like that's a big deal. And like 2019, after the summer break, when Ferrari just kept using their illegal engine, like that's a big deal. Like people don't remember that because they weren't really successful in using their illegal engine, but people don't really just forget about these things, and especially like being that this is like the first like the first of hearing of these major breaches. Like people aren't going to really care about what happened with Aston Martin because like these fines aren't in pertaining to like the cost cap. They're not like, oh, you lose X amount of money from the cost cap. Like this money is coming out of the company's pockets, and like Lawrence Stroll, like he has, that's like $500 essentially to him being paid out in fines. Like he pays his son more to crash his car every weekend, or to come in like P15 every weekend. It's just they don't really, that the money that they're going towards these fines is not substantial in any single way. And like that's they say it to say like, oh, because to the average person you hear 7 million or 400,000, like, oh, that's a lot of money. Because to everybody in here that is like, I give them that's a lot of money to us, but to them as billionaires, as the top 1% of the entire world, like that the money that they're being fined is just it's a drop in the bucket. Then it doesn't really affect them in that way. And I seen that there is a post with Toto and the basically saying what's stopping everybody else from just breaching the cost cap. Like, yeah, it's reputation. Like Mercedes did when they won those 8 constructors championships. They didn't cheat. They pushed the regulations like you're supposed to do, and then they changed the regulations because of it. But they didn't see a rule and said, you know what, that rule doesn't apply to us, and let's just go do what we want to do anyways. They can't do that because they got a black person driving their car, so they already have controversy going with that. So they can't just do what they want to do in regards to certain things, because they already have like you said last year, they have a target on their back. I mean, the target on their back is no longer there because being P3, I'm fighting for P2. That's probably not going to happen in the constructors. It kind of takes away that that target that they had, but they still want to be a premier constructor. They don't want to win based off of we see this rule, we're gonna break it just because we know we're just gonna get like a slap on the wrist. Like we can go sell 10,000 shirts to go make up for this fine. Like that's no big deal. Like that's where they're at. Like it's just, there's integrity that comes with the sport. And just saying that we can breach it, there won't be a big deal if we breach it. Like we're not going to be missing out on any money. Like that's it's just wrong, and for the whole overall sporting, just what's the word I'm looking for, the integrity. This is all. There's just, you don't want to just destroy that. It's kind of being ignored now, but they don't want to be the ones to break that.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Okay, Mada is not here. Okay, Miss Cartrock, please go ahead.
So I'm here watching some interviews with Christian Horner, and he said that, oh, hang on, I made some notes. He's upset that nobody in the other F1 teams reached out to them during this. I was like, sir, why they reaching out to you to congratulate you on cheating? Anyway, then he said that, is it 2020 or 2021, all the teams were supposed to do the dry run with the financial submissions. He said that Red Bull chose not to do the dry run, and they felt that they didn't need to because they had their house in order, and that their dry run essentially was when they did their submission in April. And when they didn't hear anything, they didn't see that it was a problem. So they're shocked that they're now coming back to say that there's an issue now. But if they're auditing 10 teams, they're not going to come back and be like, oh, you've got a mistake here, you've got a mistake there before the full audit. Everyone gets audited one by one. Isn't that how audit works? Like, what are you talking about? And then lastly, he said that you have to remember that their wind tunnel is some 1950s building that's a relic of the Cold War, and that they don't have no state-of-the-art wind tunnel like everybody else. So people should have some sympathy for them, sir. Again, we do not. Good night. He's not okay.
Okay, I think what was making me laugh is the 1950s building. I think that's what was making me laugh. But yeah, Imade, please go ahead because you were meant to be next.
Yeah, all right. Actually, Salim actually? Is Salim still around? Okay, yeah, I can see him. I wanted to ask him. He was saying something along the lines of more like encouraging Mercedes to sort of toe the route Red Bull toed because the punishment wasn't harsh enough. But my question to him is, if right now you are berating Mercedes and you're berating Red Bull and everything they've done, they've cheated, they've done this, they've gone against the rules, the agreed rules and all that kind of a thing. And because you feel they've gained the lasting advantage, or I don't think they gained the lasting advantage, but if because you think they gained the lasting advantage for this year or for next year, you're now encouraging your team to do same, then how different are you to them, the same people you are berating at this point in time for saying, oh, you cheated, you should be excluded, you should hand the championship over, you should face much more severe punishments. And you are saying, oh, my team, since these guys didn't get punished, my team should do it. Then how different are you? You are probably a cheater who hasn't committed the act yet. But I also feel, but to the whole cost cap thing, I feel the FIA, they need to sit down and have a review of the punishment and make it hard and fast through, like as we said, like technical regulations. Like if you break it, there's no negotiations. You face the consequences. So everyone knows the consequences that's coming. So all that's just going to happen is once they release the final statement, did this person break or did this person didn't break the rules? Did he breach the cost cap and that kind of thing? No, we know a $20 million punishment is awaiting them and that kind of a thing. So I think the FIA needs to do that so everybody knows what punishment is available in future and not this agreement. The FIA, this Red Bull is actually benefiting from what Ferrari benefited from in 2019. And the uproar is really wasn't that much on Ferrari then, because they really, even though they had a bullet of a car in a straight line, they were useless basically.
they couldn't even challenge Mercedes with how much of a fast car they had. So that is why, because FIA did worse things. At least the FIA is even quote and unquote a bit transparent at this point. In 2019, everything was in secret. All we knew was Ferrari was doing something to their engine, and they suddenly stopped doing it. So I feel my own point to all this is I wanted the punishment to be harsher, so it will serve as a deterrent, and then the FIA needs to review whatsoever their penalty system is for this kind of a thing and make it a hard and fast rule that once you breach the regulations, you face this particular stipulated punishment. So nothing like negotiations there. Yeah, thank you.
In my day,
all right. Can I respond? Because she kind of called me out, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Salim, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much, host.
Thank you.
Yeah. Imade, like you and I both know, I'm an engineer. Imade, you're also an engineer. We don't cheat. I don't cheat, and I don't think you heard me correctly, right? I didn't suggest that Mercedes should cheat. I even went as far as saying that's not what we do at Mercedes, and I wouldn't want us winning championships that way, right? What I said was, what's to stop a team like Mercedes? Because if it's about finances, teams like Mercedes and Ferrari and Red Bull, they have the money. They have all the money in the world. That's what I said, man. And I think I also said the punishment, I felt it should have been about 15% of wind tunnel time. Yeah, like 5% of wind tunnel time is a lot of time, right? 10% of 40 hours is 4 hours. So if you're taking 4 hours out of 40 hours, you're left with 6 hours, and you need as much CFD runs as you can find, right? So I never said we should cheat, man. I never said that, and I would never say that. And I even went as far to say that like Hamilton did say that he wouldn't want his 8th world championship to be won because, well, like a hand me down, something they would give back to him, right? He said that, and I also support that. Like, we are going to win an 8th world championship, hopefully, right? But not that way, man. I would never suggest we cheat. Come on, man.
All right, probably I had you wrong because that was what you seemed like you were inferring. Like, oh,
nah, I said what's to stop teams like Ferrari and Mercedes. That's what I said. I said 7 million is nothing, and I said like I would have expected like that money, or at least like a substantial proportion of that money, to come out from like the next year's cost cap. That's what I said, man. I would never suggest anybody cheat, man. No, we don't do that.
Salim said Mercedes don't cheat. Just like
yeah, we don't. We don't.
I want to add, Imadi, that the difference between things that happened a few years ago and now is that Twitter now is the strongest it's ever been, and the voices calling out FIA and any teams that people are unhappy with, it's an immediate voice of unity saying we're not happy about this. And I think that Twitter is keeping the FIA as honest as we can hope them to be, because I don't think they're honest, but it's forcing them to be more honest and more transparent than they would have got away with 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I want to, up to an extent, I want to agree with you, but at the same time, I want to disagree with you. Why do I say that? We that frequent Twitter a whole lot, we have conversations, spaces, and those kind of thing on Twitter. Sometimes I think we overestimate our relevance, and that is myself included, because the truth about it is the FIA, the hierarchy of the FIA, before they will make any sort of decision, let's say, just for example, let's say Red Bull broke this cost cap beyond measure and it warranted them stripping Max of his championship. They're not going to look at the Twitter outcry to say, oh, should Max be stripped? They're going to look at the finances that's going to come from, if this guy gets stripped, are we going to turn off his fans? Is Lewis being the 8th world champion going to bring in more fans? Those are the metrics they are going to look at. So that's why I said sometimes we overestimate our relevance by because we make so much noise, there's so much outrage, you see so many tweets, so many retweets, so many likes and that kind of a thing. But the truth about it is the guys that make this decision in the rooms and that kind of a thing, Twitter might just be a minute metric they check. Most of what they check is match sales, ticket sales, and that kind of a thing. So if that is still pouring in for them, honestly, you guys, we can scream from now till tomorrow. Nothing might be done from what we actually want. So that's why I say, up to an extent, I agree with you. But when you consider how much comes into the FIA and how Max is their current cash cow, I genuinely doubt they would have maybe taken anything to upset that fan base. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to ask Imadi something, please. So, Imadi, please, I'd like to ask you something. Like that 10% reduction in wait time, do you think it will affect Red Bull in a like will it affect them?
Can anyone hear me? Or was
okay,
really
Imadi, I can hear you.
All right, okay. I didn't hear the last name, but I think he said will the 10% affect Red Bull?
Yeah, does it think it will affect Red Bull?
To be honest, I would have argued yes, but genuinely I think no. Why do I think no? It's at this point in time, 2023 cars are logged in. So even if it's going to affect Red Bull, it's going to start showing in any form from 2024. Also, Red Bull has aced the regulations. Like me and my guys were still having an argument. Even up till before this space started, we're still having an argument who is the fastest car. Ferrari is fast, but I think their village people are very strong, so they have so many problems going on. But Red Bull has aced the regulations. They're very, very good on all tracks. So all they just need to do is be targeted at what they need to do, use the wind tunnel for. So will it affect them? Ultimately, it will. But my point is, it's not a harsh enough punishment, so it serves as a deterrent. Because as Salim said, tomorrow Mercedes can decide to go do it. Now let's break the cost cap, stay below the 7 million, which is the 5%, and we know what we're going to get is a reduction of wind tunnel time. Now let's break the cost cap this year, gain an advantage of about 2 years, and we'll know what we're gaining right now will make us win, but it will be covered up in the 2 years. So that's why I said I wanted the punishment to be harsher, so it will serve as a deterrent to any other person. Because if you're giving a team, let's say 25% reduction in wind tunnel, no matter how juicy that thing seems down the line, no one will want to head there. But to answer your question directly, it will affect them. It might just bring the pack closer, but I don't think it will drop them from first to third as people are expecting or something along those lines. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Imadi. Okay, guys, so there's a bit of a queue. So I'll go like this. So Polaris Papi, Sohail, sorry if I got that wrongly. Then Andrew Miscatrock, please. So yeah. Polaris, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Someone raised the issues with like why Mercedes and Ferrari will not overspend because they have the reputation of their parent companies and such to worry about. I think for me, the reason why it was important the FIA was as strict as they were, if not stricter, is if you look at a team like Haas or Williams, who don't really have much to lose, if one of the engineers comes along and says, well, I know a way to shade some kilos off the chassis, which is going to give us lap time, but we don't have the budget to make it. You could see a situation where a team like that might roll the dice and say, well, it's only 200, 300,000 for this new lightweight chassis, and we're going to make that money and then some by moving up 1 or 2 places in the championship standing. So that was more my biggest concern than the case of the biggest teams risking their reputation. Really, it's the fact that the smaller teams could decide to roll the dice, knowing the amount of money they have to gain outweighs any future penalty.
Thank you very much. Papi, please.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So, I think I wanted to touch on, I think, some of the things that Madi said. One of the reasons, I think what I read was one of the reasons why the penalty is actually not really stated out about if you breach it is so that it prevents teams doing like 7 million. If I win the championship, right, will I get maybe 20 million extra? Right, okay, so it's still 30 million net gain. So that's one of the things why it's very, and I think it's has kind of come back to bite FIA because no one knows the exact penalty that is going to be determined, and I think that's pretty fair because we also don't want people to just give that okay, we'll pay $7 million and all. Is the penalty harsh enough? I don't think so. I think the rumors were 5%, so maybe those negotiations at quota maybe reduced it to 10%. Will it affect Red Bull? I believe it will maybe a bit, but now that they know, and yes, maybe a bit of time to work on the 2023 car as well. Maybe it's just that new would not sleep as much. Maybe and the engineers would not sleep as much, right? So I think they would. I think to a very large extent, it should not affect them as much. And also, the 7 million is not going out of this year or next year's budget cap, so it's more like the consequence is not that much, right? Hopefully, it doesn't encourage other people to break. But I think FI is probably just doing this. The next person that breaks it will probably get maybe worse than this, right? So this is just like and most an example to others that if you do it, you will get more punishment than this. But then what I think Patrick was saying that Honda said people reach out to him, like, come on, what should they reach out to you for? Like that was actually very funny, but I don't think it will affect Red Bull that much, to be honest.
Thank you very much, Papi. Um, I think someone earlier asked, okay, I think it was Ridwan when he asked, if the 10% will have any impact in terms of the wind tunnel time. So, I believe, Red Bull before the punishment were allocated 28 runs, and then it's now going to be 25. Statistically, anything. If, for example, you have how will I put it? If, for example, like some of us are engineers, some of us know maths basically. If you are carrying out a certain process over and over and over and over and over again, I don't think the last 3 runs will make any difference as to the as to the remaining 25 runs carried out. So yeah, that's just my take on the wind tunnel um timing.
Can I say something?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to contribute to what you said. Before we used to have practice sessions of 1 hour 30 minutes. Right now we have practice sessions of one hour. So all Red Bull is just going to do is condense all they've been doing for 28 runs into 25, and they'll be fine. So that's why I wanted it to be harsher. Probably if they could have reduced it from 28 to 19 or to 18, let them feel the heat properly, because it will be difficult to condense 28 to 18 now 28 to 25. Do you understand? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, Hill, do you want to go ahead, please? Thank you.
Yeah, look, it's quite simple, okay? Mercedes were dominating. They were dominating left, right, and centre, like literally year after year. And Lewis Hamilton was dominating. In fact, Lewis Hamilton will still dominate, okay? He's not, personally, he's the best, right? So if he's doing this in the W13, imagine him, just imagine him with a better version. I don't even want to say W30 let's say whatever. Like, I don't even want to mention W30. Listen, they've had to basically go along and do silly things, including cheating, including lap 58, including their strategies and, using using their child companies and whatnot, whatever, getting Perez there, opening up the gap, etc., etc. Listen, it's all to do with how we can beat Lewis Hamilton. I mean, they've had to do all of this to just beat Lewis Hamilton, right? It shows you, how good he is, all right? Red Bull, okay, unfortunately for the F1 product, the F1 product need Red Bull, okay? The F1 product they need Red Bull, they need Ferrari, they need Mercedes. They need these people to sell the product. I was mentioning this in the other space, but it's a bit like the Premier League, right? The Premier League football, right? I'm a massive United fan, season ticket holder, whatnot. It used to be United, Arsenal, okay? Then Chelsea came along, then City came along, then Liverpool started growing. The Premier League product need these people, right? Klopp has just gone along here. I'm sorry to bring in football here, but I'm just giving you an example here, right? Klopp here has just got a fine. Okay, he should have got a touchline ban, but he only got a fine. Okay, simply because he's Jurgen Klopp, maybe because he's the manager of Liverpool, maybe, right? What I'm trying to say to you guys here is that Red Bull, they've got this fine, but even in punishment, the FIA have basically said to them, even in punishment, we will basically keep you happy because we actually need you for the product, right? And the product is the F1. It's an entertainment business. As much as I don't like Red Bull, as much as I don't like Max, as much as I don't like what these guys stand for, I know, and me working in the whole numbers world and whatnot, numbers talk, right? So if the product is going to sell, if the product is going to be entertaining, if the product here that has waved so many new fans through Netflix, through social media, through this new age of digital, if it's going to do them wonders, they're going to continue working with Red Bull. They're going to continue to punish them as much as possible, because they know that they've cheated, they know that they've broken the rules, but they're just going to do it in such a way where they have to keep them happy as well, because they actually need them. It's a bit like Ferrari and their brand. By the way, I'm not going to compare Ferrari and Red Bull. Ferrari are legendary status, right? Red Bull are nowhere near it. I get that. But it's like if Ferrari turned around tomorrow and said, we're leaving F1, right? They would literally pay F1. They would literally pay Ferrari to say, no, listen. We'll give you more money of, everything that we earn. We just need you here because of your status, because you're Ferrari. And that has happened. I think that happened. I think that happens anyway with Ferrari. Anyway, I think they get quite a bit share of the income simply because they're Ferrari, right? So look, I think is the punishment, going back to your question, is the punishment fit for the crime? Of course not. At the end of the day, what's 4 hours wind tunnel? Like the work's been done. The car that they've built and what they've done is a complete product, right? It's a complete product, not just for this season, but for next season as well, I would say, right? So the gap that they've built, right, is all in. They were all, they knew that what they're doing. They knew that if they go along and breach the cap and they get and they find out, they'll get a fine. But the product that they've built is probably in such a way a future-proof product that they've done it for this season and next season and the following season. There won't be no fine there then, obviously, because then they'll have the complete wind tunnel. So they've done it in a smart way, right? So as much as I don't like what they've done, but they've done it in a smart way. It's a bit like, again, I'm going to bring football back into it. It's a bit like Manchester City, right? With their fair play, FIFA fair play. They knew that they're spending over, right? But then they spent all of that, and then they did it in such a way that they still spent it, and they got their lawyers involved, and they said, well, you can't punish us because we've got better lawyers than you, and we're still going to spend money. So it's just certain people will get away with it, certain people are required for the product, certain people, depending on the sport, depending on who you are, you will, unfortunately, for the fans it is, right, unfortunately, but for the numbers, you'll continue to get away with it because the numbers talk at the end of the day. So although we know that Red Bull are cheaters, although we know that they cheated and they've broken the cost cap, we're still going to watch Formula One this weekend, right? So at the end of the day, we know that there's a team out there, right, that's literally cheated in front of us. It's all come out in black and white, but we're still going to watch it this weekend. So it is what it is. We're tied into it, and that's what it is. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sahal. Andrew, please. Andrew, then Miss Catrock. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I already kind of know what she's probably going to say. We're probably going to have the similar things in regards to what the situation. I understand like it's everything like in regards to the penalty that they received. It's not very substantial in regards to the sporting of Formula One. Like the time that they're they already have a very solid baseline car. Like when Mercedes went from the arguably the best Formula One car ever made in the W11 to the W12, they didn't just drop off the face of the planet. They were still pretty much the most rapid car on the track, and everyone else had to play catch up. That's the same thing that happened with Red Bull. Like they have 8 free practice sessions until the end of the year, I think, or something like that. So they have 8 free practice sessions, and they have qualifying and races to still collect all the data that they'd want and use that data for next year. This is being in Mexico, that this is probably one of the better places to get data. So they don't really need the extra wind tunnel time to begin with. They're still probably going to be, they're still probably going to have that pretty sizable gap in certain places. Or when I say certain places, 90% of the places that F1 visits, I don't going off of a cliff. And the fact that Christian is crying and moaning and complaining as if they've done nothing wrong and they should be, they should have their feet kissed for all the hardships that the entire paddock had them go through. I just find that that's probably like the most upsetting thing about it is the fact that he acts like, even though they've admitted fault, essentially. Like if this was a criminal case, they had pleaded guilty just because they know if they plead guilty, they'll get a less harsh fine. Like even after keeping a front saying that, well, we've done nothing wrong, everybody who's saying that we've done something wrong is a bad person, and they should feel bad for basically saying these things about us, even though that they were right. It's just the most confusing thing about the whole situation. Instead of taking some ownership or kind of sort of ignoring it like Aston Martin has been doing, they just accepted, oh yeah, we have to pay, it's whatever. There's not much we can do about it. But they just keep on the charade of saying like they're the victim, like they've been done wrong. And like people behind me who were saying like other people, if they were to just up and leave the sport, like Ferrari, even that, I doubt that'll happen. And Mercedes, if they were to say, let's just leave, let's just up and leave the sport, like they would do whatever they needed to do to keep those 2 giants of the past 10 years in the sport. They're not going to let them go and then let it be a couple of tractors and then the Red Bull rocket ship on the field. Like they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't let that happen. They're not. They know that it's all about money. And like he also raised a very good point, saying like, yeah, I'm still gonna watch practice. I'm still gonna keep my F1 TV membership for now. If something happens with Lewis leaving the sport, Mick leaving the sport, people in my age group leaving the sport that aren't named Max, I'm probably gonna stop watching the sport entirely because there's other racing out there that's more frequent and if not more interesting in more places than Formula One can be. Like it's just kind of just upsetting overall, the whole situation. Like they deserve to be punished properly, where they'll actually feel what they've done, because the money that's out of the question. Like that, they'll make that money off t-shirt sales, probably in Mexico alone. I'm pretty sure they'll be able to sell online and at the track enough money to make that money that they lost in fines up. But it's just the acting like they're the victim and they deserve better, for even though they're the ones who were caught cheating. It's just ridiculous, and I don't see how that'd be accepted by anybody. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
I think. Sorry, can I just say one thing to Andrew, please, if you don't mind, everyone?
Yeah, quickly, please.
Yeah.
Miss Catherine.
Andrew, the thing is, right? Like, like obviously in F1, Mercedes and Ferrari are huge, right? I mean, you can also obviously say the Williams and all of those. Listen, but at the moment, obviously Mercedes and Ferrari, right? They've got a say, right? And I would say, yeah, that if they really wanted to kick off and make a statement, they could, right? I mean, and the F1 or FIA would then stand up and think, hold up a second, like we've got two big teams there, talking about what we've actually given Red Bull is not good enough, etc. But it's not going to happen, right? So this is my thing. Like, no one's actually going to go along and go against what the FIA have actually given Red Bull, or so. It's one of those things, we're just stuck. As fans, we're just stuck because we know, that Mercedes are probably not happy. We know that Ferrari are not happy, but we also know that they're not going to actually complain, or they're not actually going to say anything. They might come along with a encrypted message, or Toto Wolff might come along and say something, to Sky or something. But other than that, that's it. I mean, we're not going to see anything else, and that's the sorry state. I mean, it's just. That's the problem that I have. I mean, obviously, there's been nothing where I can turn around and say Mercedes have said something and they've reversed it, or Ferrari have said something, or both of them have come along and said something, and then they've reversed the decision. It's just never happened. So we're just in catch-22, and that's the problem.
Yeah, there's nothing they can do. The only thing that they could do is say, we as Mercedes and Ferrari are going to stop making power units and we're going to pull out of the sport entirely, and there will be a Renault blowing up every other race and a bunch of Red Bulls, and then that'll be it. But that's not going to happen either. So it's basically, especially if you're like a newer fan and you've just been in the sport since, let's say, 2020, as of recently, they're probably going to be kind of left with nothing. They're just saying, we've acknowledged this to the minimum extent. We're going to keep it pushing, and that's about it. That they're not going to really do much else. You're just going to have to get over it. That's basically what the FIA is going to do, and it has done in the past with, as you said, lap 58 and basically everything else in between. They're just going to let's just keep moving and act like it didn't happen at all. And, we're going to make some money.
Okay. Okay, Miss Catrock, I know you are next. Miss Catrock, just before or rather after you share your opinion, I would like you to answer, or rather, what did you think of the FIA overturning the what's his name again? Alonso's Alpine and Haas controversy, and then restoring Alonso's points back. What did you think about that? Since we are still on the whole FIA topic, and yeah.
I was surprised that they did it retrospectively anyway, because they behave like they can't overturn nothing. So the fact that they actually overturned it, I was like, okay, so you can overturn, can you? Criminals. And then I'm glad that his team then also appealed that decision. And again, FIA is for turning. They do 360-degree turns, depending on who asks them. So there you have it. They're turntables.
Just to add into that, like, it was very interesting how they did the whole thing. I mean, how his mirror fell off, but then the wheel fairing on Max's car was, basically almost about to fly off under braking. And same thing with Checo's car. His end plate flew off, and it was no big deal. They didn't really care.
But they're
But
supposed to black flag. Is it black flag?
black
Those
and orange.
people to come in and get the fixes done. And this isn't the first race that they haven't done it. So really, I don't even blame the drivers or the teams. Again, it's FIA just doing foolishness. Because if you were doing your job and following your own rules, we wouldn't have these situations. Because when his mirror was bouncing along, you should have made him come back to the garage before it flew off.
On that, I still wonder why they didn't bring out the black flag, because for us they brought out, I say black flag, the black and orange flag, because for us they did that to them, Singapore, Canada, and wherever else,
But they know that Alonso will kick off. They don't want the smoke.
Yo,
No,
how's
that was
about
not
it?
what happened actually. So it was a different race director that was making. It was the first race director that was called given Magnussen the black and white flag. So this is a different race director actually. So I think that's where the real issue came from.
I think in terms of this whole stewardship and all of that, yeah, I think it's better they have a specific set of people, that just
They should
travel
pay the
across.
stewards and get stewards that follow rules, are under their guidance, that get paid, that's not affiliated with anyone, that's objective, and they're employees. That's what they
Yeah,
need to be doing.
yeah,
Because
and
you get enough money that you could do that. You could hire people full time.
And I was going to add that at all races, not today you're in Bahrain, tomorrow
Yeah,
you'll
that's
be in
what I'm saying. Hire
Miami,
them full time and fly them
Yeah,
around the world.
because that way you tend to get more experience and then more understanding,
And more
so
consistency.
yeah, more
and hopefully
consistency.
more objectivity.
So
Anyway, my point that I was gonna make when I had my hand up. So this is Cat Rock reporting for F1 Niger News. Christian Horner was on the TV chatting shit again. He said that he's not giving an apology. In fact, the 9 teams need to apologize to him. And I was like, imagine you cheated. Oh, and he said because them talking about Red Bull gave them reputational damage. No, sir. It came from you cheating. Imagine you cheated, you got found out, you're demanding apologies from the people who didn't cheat, and you got the nerve to be here running up your gums, wasting up my TV space. What the hell is wrong with him? He just gets on my bloody nerves. The entitlement of it all. He's out of order. Anyway, Cat Rock reporting for F1 Niger News. Good night.
oh my Lord Jesus. Okay. Yeah, Geta, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what this Cat Rocks and somebody else earlier was saying. I was listening to Christian Horner speak in disbelief. It almost sounded like it was a Cold War relic. It sounded like he would start a GoFundMe for energy bills next, or he wanted us to pay him some money. It was terrible. It was just a dreadful, dreadful look. He just if nobody knew anything about this guy and they just looked at him, like whinging, they'll be like, why is every reporter pouncing on him like this? What's he done? Unbelievable. I was looking at it in disbelief, but I have no doubt at all, that this time next year, they would have breached this rule in some other way, have AlphaTauri as an accomplice to breach, to get over this whatever 7% CFD and wind tunnel time that is their deficit. No doubt at all. The accepted breach agreement is, in theory, supposedly allowing FIA more access. FIA is literally going to be like CCTV inside Red Bull. That's what the ABA is all about. That Red Bull will give them unlimited access to review everything they do, not just submit their accounts, but FIA can now review. But I have no trust on FIA will use that access for anything to police them in the manner they should see fit. I just don't. So, if anything, I'm just hoping that through Sheila Anro or whoever from the FIA side that Toto's got the years off, that at least we get some juicy stuff out. We could have some fun. But I literally, I don't think that FIA will police them in any way that they should be.
I reckon, Gator, I reckon they'll use that footage to create some Netflix series and documentaries, like, inside documentary on, certain exclusive footage that, they'll get. So I think they'll probably spin it like that. But I'll be absolutely honest with you guys. Christian Horner, right? Like, this guy is such a clown, right? So I can't stop laughing at him now. Like, I honestly think that this guy.
I want to punch him, not laugh at him. It was ridiculous.
But I do.
Please, we don't encourage violence, please.
Like, do you want some money for energy bills of the 1950s wind tunnels, boy?
I do think that he's on a wind up. Honestly, this guy, like,
he's trolling us. That's why
he's trolling. He is. He's definitely a troll. He's a troll. He knows that he's got away with everything. He knows that obviously Max has won. He knows that Red Bull's won. He's just trolling us all now. He knows what's happening, man. He probably knows that we're gonna go on Spaces and talk about this clown as well. He knows that he's a massive troll, man. So,
and he knows that if he chats shit on TV, he trends on Twitter. He loves it.
He loves it. Yeah, you're right. He does.
And also, the American guy that was speaking before saying that Mercedes and the rest aren't going to object. They can't object because after the ABA, you can't review, you can't object. There's nothing you can do. So there's no point talking because there's nothing that can change.
There's nothing. Then they won't reverse anything. Like, basically,
that's part of the rules. Is that once the decision has been made, there's no right to review for any team.
Exactly.
Well, they're worried about 2023. That they're not worried about this year anymore. It's kind of done and dusted.
Yeah. This year's done.
Has Matteo Binotto said anything other than Andrea Seidel? I didn't see anybody unhappy. Everybody said, "Well, the punishment fits the crime." That's what Toto said. That's what Zach Brown seems to indicate, and even Otmar.
Well, I don't think. I'm talking about team principals. I don't think they are necessarily satisfied with the punishment handed out. Because you see what Andrea Seidel is saying, and he's one of the most quiet team principals. I personally think Otmar should not even open his mouth. He dare not open his mouth because he's responsible for this 2021 Aston Martin bridge cap. So he dare not open his mouth. So as for Gunther is worried about the points he lost from Austin. So everyone's problem is different at the end of the day,
Can I just ask you guys a question just on Christian Horner, right? The way how this guy's an absolute dickhead, right? Okay, that's the best way I can put it. But wouldn't you want? So I don't know how many people here follow. I don't know if you're fans of Mercedes or whatnot, but wouldn't you want Toto Wolff to have a bit of of what Christian Horner smokes, basically? Because to me, I do feel
pointless.
But the reason why I say that is that it could be pointless, right? But I do think that it does influence certain things. Like, I do think that his character does influence certain things, and he has got away with it. And I just think that maybe if Toto Wolff had that a bit about him, I don't know. I just think that Toto Wolff is just too calm now. I think he's obviously. He's got a lot of sponsorships.
But you're asking a duck to be a chicken. They're two different personalities.
I'm just thinking he needs to probably just smoke something what Christian
Oh,
Horner
not
smokes
just
before,
that.
yeah. Just
Daimler board would not like it if Toto will. Ah, Daimler
yeah,
would
you're
not
right,
allow
you're right.
Toto
Yeah,
a free reign like that. They would be like,
yeah,
you
the board.
represent us.
Okay. Okay, guys, can we hear from Enobong, please?
Yeah, I was just going to respond to what the other speaker was saying about Toto being like Christian. You know, that has been my biggest problem with Toto and the entire Mercedes team, you know, for like a couple of seasons, especially 2021. I was like, if only Toto could just drop his classiness for just a little bit and be messy and petty as Christian is, we probably wouldn't be in like half of the trouble that we were. And I mean, we can joke and laugh about it, but I remember like last season where you know, Max probably wouldn't get a penalty for, you know, driving recklessly or running Lewis out of the track. Mercedes does nothing about it. They're like, oh, we're not going to appeal, you know, You go to Sky Sports and you say 1 minute on how you're not happy about it, and then we all move on. And even with Abu Dhabi too. I mean, I thought that they could have followed through with the appeal, but they didn't. You know, I was mad, but you know, that's fine. But that's been my problem with Mercedes. I also think it translates to how some of the racism that Lewis gets, you know, on track and from the racers or from the fans. I just, in some way, feel that they don't protect, you know, his interests. That's how I see it, in my opinion. And then they also don't fight for him like in the bunch of things. I mean, look at last season; it was crazy. You're like, why are you guys not seeing anything? Like, why do you just, okay, you know, we'll take it, we'll do our talking on the track, yes. But sometimes you have to meet people where they are, and Christian Horner is one of those people where you need to meet him where he is, because I mean, he may sound like a clown to us, you know, he's funny, blah, blah, he's trolling us, but he gets away with a lot of things because of, you know, that pettiness that he has. And I think that Toto needs to be a little bit more like him if he wants to get things done. That's my opinion.
Okay, Enobong, go ahead. I think we lost you there for a second. You said that pettiness that he has.
Yeah, I was saying, I think Toto needs to be a little bit more like Christian, you know, if he has to get anything done, because Mercedes has been at the receiving end of, you know, Red Bull's schematics. So the answer to that is yes. Toto needs to be a little bit more like Christian if he has to get anything done.
Not even just like Christian. The same way how Haas and Alpine went head to head, like, you need to go and fix this. No, I'm gonna come in and say review that review. Even like that, because clearly they're happy to look at things after the race.
Yeah.
I personally think Toto's not going to do that. He's a businessman first. Like, if you just look at his history and like his net worth and the things he's involved with, I don't think he's the type of person to stoop down to the level. I mean, he's had the opportunities for many, many times throughout the years to stoop down to the level of, you know, people who try to do, you know, a little bit unsavory, you know, unprofessional type of things.
I'm
But
not
he's
saying unsavory, because Alpine and Haas wasn't unsavory. They just weren't happy and they appealed, and then they appealed the appeal. You need to have that same energy. If you feel that something happened wrongfully on the track, the same way how people are happy to appeal after the fact to say you treated my driver unfairly, he needs to get some of that energy.
Exactly.
Not to be all in the mud with Christian, but there's an appeal process. Use it.
I get it. I definitely understand. I watched that race last year to end the season. I watched it live, and it was pretty sickening. I was like, yeah, they need to protest the absolute life out of the results of this race. I understand they're more
not
focused on the
just
sporting.
not just the results of their drivers, because in Q1, Max clearly exceeded track limits and nobody protested. Nobody brought to say, look, you haven't looked at this. But I bet you that if anybody else of them 9 was off the track, Christian would be the first person in there screaming. So
But
I
they're
get
you
it.
not
know,
the same
that's
energy.
kind of also how you win in Formula One too. To be honest, you need
Yeah,
to point out when the other team is doing something wrong, because that's
because
how you gain
Max
like the
is
little
driving
advantages.
and he is constantly complaining and constantly telling on everybody else.
I get
Constantly, the whole time.
I get what you guys are saying, but like that's it's like going back to the point like of stooping down to their level, because like at last year, if you watched, I don't care how you were kind of positioned either way, by the time that they got to Saudi Arabia, Max had mentally lost the championship in his head because he brake tested him, safety car. He walked off the podium as if they, you know, stole all of his money and took his girlfriend like he did to some other people in the Red Bull family. They act like he was done wrong in those times. He was mentally defeated at that point of the championship, and like you can tell when they came to the last race that it was basically over with and it was going to be a historical moment. It was historical for an entirely different reason, but yeah, you get what I mean. But they have Mercedes wants, they have the materials, they have the person, they have the personnel, they have everything that you need to win the championship, you know, on a track. They had it all, everything that you needed to win on a track, and they couldn't because something off the track prevented them from doing that. They're a very sporting group. They're not somebody who's going to want to cry and moan until they get their way. They want to throw a temper tantrum, or oh, look at me, I'm feeling some type of way because I can't do this by myself. We can't do this with what we have. We need help. We need some sort of assistance to do it. I really understand what you guys are talking about. Like, I personally wanted, Mercedes to take whatever action they could to overturn whatever happened, but that's not what Mercedes is really about. They don't really want to do things like that.
But
They're
even if
very
they're
sporting.
about, it's the system that's flawed, because you appeal
Oh,
to
I get
the
it.
stewards and then you appeal to FIA to look back at the decision that they've already told you no. So you have to go back to them about 2 or 3 times before you even get to an outside body. So what are you gonna hear? No, the whole time, because they regulate themselves. So the process is flawed.
What I don't get, right, is that like we all got to know, yeah, that the rules were broken in lap 58. Okay, that they were not the rules, right? So look, if the rules are in black and white, and Toto knew about that, he's got something to appeal against. He's got something to go against. Why did he march into that office and then not even appeal? I still do not get. I still don't understand that. Like the whole energy that he showed that he's going to appeal, and the way how he marched in, and the way how they sat there, and all of those, like, and then come out and not do anything about it. Like I just don't get it.
Because the process is flawed. When you go in and you appeal to the stewards who made the decision, and then you appeal to FIA who employed the stewards who made the decision, you're gonna get the same answer.
Yeah, I also think that, and like, I don't think he wants a Mickey Mouse championship either.
Yeah,
like,
they
I'm
want to
pretty sure
win
he
on
wants
the
to
track.
earn it. Like, he wants to earn everything. Like,
And they want the confetti and all of the moments.
No, but the truth
yeah,
about
they
last
don't want it.
No.
But the truth about last year is that
Okay.
they earned it.
No. Last season, like, it was earned. It was completely
Yeah.
earned. I'm talking about last season. So it's not about he wants the confetti and all of that kind of stuff, and he wants, Chrysler, and he wants his stakeholders.
But you're not taking into account that the way how the system works, there was nothing. It was like this. There's no right of appeal.
Oh, no,
Well, they could have appealed it. They had the opportunity to appeal in
Yeah,
Minneapolis.
but it goes back to FIA. So if they've told you no, and then you appeal that decision, and they've told you no, and the third person is still them, what are you doing?
I know, but
well, the FIA weren't going to do anything about it.
Exactly. So are you going to just waste your time and long it out?
They weren't trying to waste time. They literally knew, because if the FIA had the opportunity to do whatever they want,
they said no twice.
It was the next calendar year where they had the opportunity, and they had admitted the mistake, and they chose to not do anything about it. They just chose to. They could have did something. They could have said, "Yeah, let's give the championship to the person who should have won the race." Yeah, they They didn't do that. They chose not to follow the safety car
And if you
procedure. They just
continue
chose not
with
to do
the
those things.
appeal, you can't appeal and race at the same time. So all around, your hands are tied.
Is that really the rule, though? You can't appeal and race at the same time?
Yes.
That's crazy.
So it's the rules. That's why I keep telling you, the way how they've set the rules up, it makes no sense. Because other sporting bodies, it doesn't work like that. It should go outside of them to another sporting body that's objected, that had nothing to do with F1.
All right,
That
so if
looks
that's
at
the, if that's the
everything
case,
and makes the decision.
if that's the case, so what was all of the drama about him going inside the office, and what was all of that about if he knew that he's just not even going to appeal? I don't get it.
Because he
No,
did
yeah,
go,
but in
he
the heat of
did
the
go
moment,
in
you
and
are really
appeal
thinking,
though.
you are thinking
They
that
did
far.
appeal.
I think you're wrong.
And they said no.
I think you're wrong.
I don't get it. I just think that basically he should have appealed no matter what people are saying right now. That lap 58 was flawed, right? And at the end of the day, you can appeal, and he didn't appeal, and that's where Total Wolff, definitely.
But he did
What are
appeal.
you
What do you
talking
mean?
about, Suha?
They appealed straight
He literally
away.
appealed. What are you talking about?
They appealed 10 seconds afterwards.
They
Honestly, as soon
appealed
as the
straight
race was
away.
over,
They did
they
appeal.
went and
What are you
appealed.
talking about?
And they got told
What
no.
idiot.
They just pulled it out because they knew that they were going to have to jump through hoops,
then
and
they'd
they're
have
going
to
to take it to court, and they're going to
Yeah.
have to do a bunch of other legal things to
I'm
get their
talking.
way,
Meanwhile,
and
Lewis
it'll
is
look like they have a
completely
Mickey
broken
Mouse
because
championship
remember, you
going
have to
into
deal
it.
with the mental health of your driver.
Thank you. Someone said it.
I'm talking about showing the fight, and I'm talking about literally like the season's over, fight for it. You can obviously fight
Yeah,
for
but
it,
how can you
but
fight when the
they didn't
rules
do it.
doesn't work in your favor?
I
What are
know,
you
but
fighting?
they literally didn't do anything. Turn it around and it's a Red Bull. I guarantee you they'll be fighting for it even till probably today.
I think that it's unfair to say
That's
they
obvious.
didn't do anything because they did appeal and they lost.
Okay.
I'll be honest. I disagree with you.
I just don't think that Mercedes took it as much as they should have taken it. That's the only thing. I think that
Rubbish.
They did. They went to their lawyers, and that's when they realized that you then have to go back to FIA a third time.
Thank you.
Papi, can we hear from you, please?
Okay, so I think the thing is, Christian and Toto are two different. They have two different personalities, right? Toto would rather maybe say fuck them all, like when he did at Brazil, or smash his headphones, on the table in Saudi, right? I think that's where he let his own frustration. You won't see Christian doing that, right? Christian typically knows how to lobby, maybe go and meet, I don't know, maybe Dominicali or whoever, to get his way. And I actually believe that if the way they are saying, if
okay, sorry, Papi, when you finish, sorry.
Okay, so I believe if the tides were turned, if what happened to Mercedes at Abu Dhabi actually happened to Red Bull would have actually gone all the way and ensured, maybe apart from maybe even get Mass fired and all of those things, right? So, but I think you can't force Toto to be Christian, to be honest, because that's just not the kind of person he is, right? He would rather put his frustration out there, right? You won't see Christian doing that, and maybe to be like I said, it works for each one of them. But maybe now that Messi is a bit on the back foot, or maybe at least this season, you'll probably see this kind of maybe a few changes, right? I mean, it was Toto and Binotto that allowed us to first hear about the low-cost cap issue, and then we were having several meetings talking to the media. So maybe that's also starting to change. Unlike before, where Wi-Fi would just do their thing, right? So hopefully it changes and it becomes more of honor in the coming years. But I think they are fundamentally two different people that have different ways of getting their jobs done. Because it also, I just remember now, during that last lap, it was literally Honor's call to Mercy that allowed him to, I think, maybe tell those lap cast to overtake, because he told that you only needed one lap, right, to fix Latifi's car or take it off the track, right? And it was almost immediately, that was when that instruction went out, those particular lap cars should overtake the safety car, right? So if he didn't put that pressure, Toto just scored and just said, Mikey, that is wrong or something like that, right? And he didn't change anything in the long run. So yeah.
I mean, if somebody can do 57 laps in a desert and can see that they're being cheated, yeah,
sorry,
I mean,
is
it's
this
pretty
not
obvious.
about the fine? I thought this was about the fine.
We're just talking about team principle.
Mm.
We've gotten a little bit farther. I'm sorry.
So you're not in the wrong place. It's about the fine, but you know, I think we have, obviously we tend to refer to the past a lot, which hurts, but I guess we have to allow people share their experiences when it comes to the past.
I just need to say something on that fine. Yeah, very much deserved.
Yeah.
Because listen, Hamilton should have won that. Hamilton should have won every day of the week. We all know this. That £2.2 million over budget, they deserve it. They deserve the £7 million fine. Okay, I don't agree, right, with Suhail saying that they don't deserve it. I think they do deserve it. Okay, I think anyone who thinks Red Bull have been screwed over, you need to give your head a wobble, mate, because this ain't the place for cheaters. And Hamilton was screwed over so Verstappen could get a title. It's disgusting. Disgusting.
Sorry. But when did I say that Red Bull don't deserve a fine?
You just said it, my friend. You just said it.
What are you talking about?
You said Red Bull don't. The punishment didn't fit the crime.
No, that's not what I said.
He didn't say that.
Saying.
No.
He didn't say that, bro.
No. I think there's been some miscommunication.
I swear I heard him say that the fine was not just.
No. I think obviously I will be here with you for a while. So
make an appointment to Specsavers. Yeah, go and clean your ears, right, and your take that wax out, and come back and join Spaces.
I don't appreciate that rudeness. I wasn't rude to you, my friend. Please don't be rude to me.
Please, guys, please. Let's be cautious and be respectful to everyone. Zal, I guess you probably misheard him wrongly. Because Zahil is he's not will I say. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you're even contented with the fine given to Red Bull, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know what Zal's talking about. Sorry, I think he's completely lost the plot. He might
So,
be drunk.
I appreciate you speaking.
Sorry to both of you, please, for the miscommunication. But yeah, okay, let's hear from the other speaker. So we've got Ridwan Adebayo then. Ridwan Salim then Adebayo. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so like the thing is that I'm hearing what everyone have been saying. But to be honest, in this life, for personally for me, if you do something bad, there's a punishment for it. And now the punishment has been given. I think that was all. I think right now, Red Bull has accepted that, yes, this what happened. But there's no the team principal, like, is leading almost like 1,000 employees who now come and accept something like that. No, I don't think anyone will do that. I don't think so. I don't think, like, this is sports. Everyone is fighting for millions of dollars. So that's just it. And people saying that Toto and Honor, like, normally they are different kind of people. They have different kind of personality. So, like, Honor is the kind of person that it would seize you to the extent that you have to bring out the worst out of you. And the thing is that everyone on that grid, like everyone with the team principle, like everyone has their bad side. Like if they're about to bring it out, like it will surely show. Because I can remember clearly at Silverstone last year when Toto was actually sending an email to Masi during the Grand Prix. Like, for what exactly? Because of the incident that's happened in the first lap. Like, for what exactly? Actually, what Christian said, that's exactly what brought out that now, no, we too to start like play like we need to start talking to the FIA about decisions that are going wrong with them also. So that's exactly what started it. So there's no how. It's just that we actually don't see, or it actually do not affect some people. So the thing is that like this space that we are in tonight, if Red Bull had not won that, if Max had not won the championship last season, to be honest, most people won't care about it. It's just about the first cap of it. Most people won't care. See, right now, every time we're talking about Red Bull. No one's like normally we talked about Aston Martin also. We're not even talk about Red Bull, about them like that. So Arsenal, the thing is just that like everyone just has their own personality. And actually last season was like they made a big mistake from the beginning. That's just it. So actually talking about last season and this season, like they really tried to cover many things, most especially that like the direct radio from the team principal to the FIA. Like actually that's a very good thing that they stopped. They stopped that thing. Like it's not joke. There's no how a person. It's just that for me, like they just put Michael Massey like the man, like as I don't know how I'm going to put it, because actually he's the one that gave the final approval. Yes, fine, he's the one that gave the final approval. But what about the other two words that was with him in that particular office that they were making decisions together? And we had nothing about them. I'm pretty sure that they are still working with the FIA. That's pretty sure. But no, they have to save their face. They have to send massively. And they actually did. And
guys, like FP2 is about to start.
Yeah, we are aware. Anyway, and sorry, we're not. We're me and my wife, Sha.
They're testing Pirelli
So
tires.
if you are interested in FP2, you might watch FP2, but it's more. Well, I say it's more of the Pirelli
so
tire
I'm not
test.
like
So
the thing about me watching like I'm not gonna be watching Russell because he's the only one that will be on 45 minutes the normal tire. So but actually I want to see what no Pirelli tires who does that. So I think this is done. So back to like this cost cap thing, like we might still prolong things. The thing is just that I feel like the old rule book that both this financial regulation, technical regulation, and the sporting regulation, the old rule book needs to be reviewed. Like just look at what happened with Fernando this week. Like the protest. Normally the protest was genuine. Fine, the protest was genuine. Like Alpine accepted the protest. Like yes, the car wasn't deemed fit to continue racing. But what did Alpine use to get by the PCM? They actually look for a loophole in the rule book that the protest after, I think 1 hour after, like when the close time that they can protest, they actually protest around that time. That it doesn't make sense. Now they are now bringing out Oxford Dictionary of the word impossible. Like when actually Red Bull actually protested, and it's not all. Like to me, I just feel that the old rule book should be reviewed, and like they should just make a sense out of it. Like the thing is, look, like there are many instances that has happened this season. Like last season now in Belgium, I think I'm not be sure. Like in Belgium last season, that was when everybody knew that yes, if they did not finish a race under the red flag, that they will be like if they finish like some amount of time under the red flag, that they will be for instance the race distance will be used to calculate the points. That's exactly what everybody knows. Still, the race in Japan, like now they are now telling us that even though if you finish that, the time is still counted. That you just need to finish. That you have to see the checkered flag. So the thing is just that the whole rule book, the whole laws needs to be reviewed. And if they can do that, just look at what Fernando said. Fernando said that if like they are not able to apply the rules, that like it will surely affect like it will surely affect the future. Be something like that. I don't know how to go to phrase what he said. So to be honest, I just feel like we can just continue talking about it. I think the case is closed. There's no Red Bull will surely will has accepted their fate, and that's just it. So me, we move on. So that's it.
They accept it because they're out there saying that other people is lying on them. They're the liars.
Okay.
Fine,
Okay.
fine, fine. I agree. I did of us. We are cheater. Yes, we all agree we are that, but everyone is not clean. That's
So
just
tell Horner to pack it in.
before you expect a person managing almost 1,000 of people to just keep quiet. No, he won't do that. That's just it. He won't. Never. So yeah, that's just it.
He can talk, but stop lying. But
It's not lying.
It's a tall order.
It's not
So
lying.
if you're saying that you got found guilty, but you're saying you didn't,
it's not lying. It's not lying. It's just
bending the truth. He's a truth
just
bender.
In English. That's just it.
Okay. Anyways, let's have Salim, then Adebayo, please.
All right, thank you so much, man. Like I swear, I've been laughing. I've been really laughing. Yeah. The issue I think for most of us is like I've been saying. I think all year, like there has been a lack of consistency, right? And a bit of transparency. Um, I think a lot of people in the F1 community, a lot of people on this space, well, aggrieved by what happened last year and what has happened this year, right? When you look back in time and look at what happened to McLaren, right? Like they got $100 million fine, they got all their championship points taken off, right? For something that they actually didn't use all the data that the one person got, they didn't actually use that data, right? Then something like this happens where what's his name, Ross Brown actually said the championship of whatever team found wanting would be stripped, right, of their championship or their points. They would be disqualified. Then something like this happens. So I think a lot of people are very, very emotional about this. But at the end of the day, I don't think at this point in time, I don't think it's really going to change. And I feel that there should be like an independent body that should actually come in besides the FIA to make I don't know, to make evaluations or some kind of audit.
To
Because
mediate.
like, yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. To mediate, perhaps. Yeah, because the decision making by the FIA has been really flawed, right? And as it's going, honestly, I don't think it's going to change. So I think, as Andrew, I think did say that like we're still going to watch, but yeah, we actually shouldn't just keep watching, but we have to like voice out our opinions and what we feel should actually be implemented, right? Well, I have to go. I actually want to watch FP2. So cheers, guys.
No, well, Engineer Salim, happy testing. Adebayo, please go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I so much believe that probably like some of the things might say rather, a lot of people have said it, but I was on the space, right? I think I'm going to start with the fact of having to compare two personalities together. I think we would all agree with me probably that if you compare how things work in Formula One compared to other sports when it comes to regulatory body, it's probably maybe Formula One that seems like you can maneuver your way, right? So, for example, in the NBA, there's something they call tax um um tax bill or something, right? So if you go above the tax, whatever, you get a tax fine, right? In football, there's financial fair play. Not really a fan of football. I know that there's financial fair play, and they've actually like banned some teams for even like participating in transfer windows, right? Right. And that are the consequence of a sport or sports that have like a very clear rule book, right? So you already know that if you do this, irrespective of so if you are saying a minor breach, right? Irrespective of whatever cap it is, you are already clear cut on what penalty you should get, and not like trying to negotiate, right, with the offender, right? To me, that doesn't seem like a regulatory body that actually wants to impose what they need to do rightly, right? And having to say that two managers, that one would lobby, one would, I don't think that makes solid sense, because if you look at the background of both of them, right? So one is coming from a private equity kind of thing where all his life, right, he has been working with companies, corp, gov, corporate governance and the rest, right? So in his mind, right, at that particular point in time, two things will be at the back of his mind, right? Investors' confidence, right? Which to him, right, he owns 33% of the team, right? You can't say that about Honor, right? Honor is basically an employee, right? Right. I don't know how many I don't know the percent of shares he owns in Red Bull, but Toto Wolff owns 33%, right? So whatever decision he's making, right, he'll be looking at it from the board perspective in conjunction with the team perspective, because it's part of the board, right? Right. And one of the things that naturally an organization will want to do, right? I'm a Mercedes fan, right? They will not want all those back and forth, right? It's still the same answer Toto gave, right? They will leave it to the regulatory body, do your investigation, right? Come up with the findings of your investigation, then also outline the steps you need to take to prevent recurrence, right? Then come up with whatever what your recommendation would be, right? That is, for me, that should be the way in which a sport should be run, right? So if a mistake was done by the regulatory body, that should be the process, that should be the procedure, not that you now be saying that one team would go as far as lobbying. Lobbying doesn't show sign of a sport that has true corporate governance, right? That the regulatory body has true corporate governance. Yes, lobbying exists in everywhere, right? But again, we can't really beat up our chest and say that FIA knows what they are doing, right? Their rule book, like what a lot of people have said, right, since when I've joined it, their rule book are not straightforward, right? They're open to different interpretation. It now depends on what overlapping. I love the example this guy used, right? Read one, right? The Japan one, right? They had to now say that, oh, that there's one overlapping rule in one line that nullifies whatever that they did, and they now said later on that they will try to correct that to prevent recurrence. That to me doesn't show a regulatory body that knows their work. To be honest, right? Right. And in my own opinion, right, I think what they need in that FIA, they need a total restructuring, right? Let everyone let's make your things much extremely transparent, right? Right. If you breach minor, if there's a minor breach, everybody already knows, the team already knows the kind of punishment. Like, it's clear, right? Not like they will say, we'll now start hearing that, oh, 25% is whatever that they want to give them. Oh, they can make it to be much, much interesting, right? Probably half percentage, right? So if you are saying that minor bridge is 5%, or probably between, if you bridge between 0 to 50% of that 5%, you get this, irrespective of whatever amount you bridge, you get this, right? If you bridge between 51% to 100% of that 5%, you get this penalty. Let it be clear. And I think that should be how a sport. I really don't know about football, but I think about financial fair play. That's how it works, right? You already know that if you breach this, right, you already know what your punishment is, right? Whether they would ban you from 2 summer transfers or 2 transfer market or so. I don't know how it really works that much, but I know of other sport that has these clear rules. But we can't beat that chest and say confidently that FIA runs that. You might look at what happened to Alonso now, right? To Alonso's team, in their defense, they had to use dictionary to define a word to FIA. Does that sound to you like a regulatory body that really knows their work? A team having to quote according to dictionary, to Oxford Dictionary. I don't know the version of the dictionary they quoted, whether it's Oxford or Cambridge or whatever, right? That this means this, and based on this should not have been allowed to occur, right? It doesn't. And if you look at the whole incident in itself, right, you guys didn't wave a black and orange flag to Alonso, so you've already even breached your own. You've already cooked the beans, right? It's just like a whole lot of. I think the whole problem in itself, right? It's fundamentally has to do with the FIA, right? If the FIA can own their shit and really create like a much transparent, a much straightforward regulation system or regulatory system, right? Then I think all teams would sit up, right? But everybody knows that you can negotiate your way, right? So they would rather choose to negotiate their way, right? And to me, right, I feel the consequence of whatever decision they've made now will not be evident, right? Now until probably let's see the next when they do the next budget cap, the 2023 budget cap, the 2024 budget cap. That's when we see that this budget cap of the thing is really not effective, because teams now knows that, right, I can choose to bridge it with Revolut percentage and negotiate my way to 10%, right? So imagine next year, right? Next year, I'll round up with this, right? Imagine next year, probably Alpine or McLaren manages to have like a very fast car, right? Right? A team that they've not had like a championship winning car at all. They managed to like develop a championship winning car, right? Right? And you're not telling me that you want them to be restricted by budget cap. They would rather go all out, just spend, let's bridge it by 2 million. Let's win the championship. Let's win the WDC championship. Then we could get our fine 10% reduction and go back to our status quo. That's the way some teams will look at it, right? And would that serve the purpose of the budget cap? Definitely not, right? I'm done.
Okay. Imani, please go ahead. Okay, Nabong, do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly respond, not necessarily respond, but just comment on something that I think Adebayo said. So, I completely agree with the conversations around the FIA overhauling the rule book, and I think Redwan mentioned it too. Yeah, which I completely agree. But in terms of Toto and Horner, I think the conversation came up, when we were discussing. When we deviated to discuss Abu Dhabi last year, and stuff like that. But it's not necessarily at least from my own point of view, it's not necessarily in terms of lobbying, right? So it's in terms of, at the very least, protesting some of the decisions that are being made. Bearing in mind that you're dealing with a regulatory body that had just refused to change. So time after time, I remember when we had, we had this conversation maybe 2 weeks ago where people were saying, oh, they should take away the championship from Red Bull and, and all of that. And I was like, it's not going to happen. So you're dealing with a sporting body who has refused to change the way that they approach things, who are not consistent with their rules, who has refused to overhaul the rule book. And so how do you continue? I understand the way that, and as a Mercedes fan, the things I'm complaining about, with Toto is what I actually love about him and the team entirely. But it gets to that point where the sporting body has refused to change. What do you do? Right? So not about lobbying. An example, we brought new parts last week. We couldn't use it, right? Of course, we couldn't use it because, we didn't have enough, and all of that. But then we had to make slight modifications to it. Why? Because we just didn't want to go through the hassle of going back and forth with the FIA. But in truth, these specifications were given to the FIA. They had agreed to it, and all of that. And then we are coming back to the table where, to avoid trouble, let's just do A, B, C, D, E, right? So it's that thing where Mercedes is continuously, having to maybe adjust something or do things differently just so I don't want their problem, just like it feels like an avoidance kind of thing where you need and
compare it to the floors that went on for weeks.
Exactly. So
it's adjustments.
Yeah, so a typical example is the entire 2021 season, right? I mean, we all saw the season. I'm not even talking about Abu Dhabi. I'm talking about, different scenarios where Lewis was in situations where, the decisions were not made, as they should have. Like, the penalties were not given to Max for something that he did or blah, blah, and all of that. And then, you would expect...
but do you have a specific event?
Sorry?
Like for this 20, we're talking about where, or rather, you say some events where he wasn't.
I mean, your typical example is Brazil. The only good thing about Brazil was that Lewis won that race, right? So that's a typical example. It happened in a couple of races. So my point is, there are things that you'll be so furious about, and you'd expect that Mercedes would at the very least protest. At least protest that. I mean, look at Alpine. At least, at the very least protest that decision. But it doesn't happen. So we're like, okay, let's leave it to them, and then, of course, we do our talking on the track. And that's fine. But why I was saying you need to meet people at their level is because, like I said, you're dealing with a sporting body that's just refused to change. So not necessarily about lobbying. It's like, so maybe the question is now, how then do you ensure, because Mercedes has been at the receiving end of some of these, fluctuating decisions or penalties and all of that. So how then do you ensure that, you're protecting your driver's interests, also bearing in mind that you're here to score points, right? So those are things that, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I brought it up to say that, Toto is a little bit too, I mean, I love them for it. That's why I like the Mercedes team, but maybe it's become a little bit too lukewarm for me. That's just what I think.
I mean,
Imade, do you want to go ahead? Okay. Wait. Okay.
Just give me like a minute before Imade goes. Let me just so this is what this is my honest opinion about Abu Dhabi. Let me come out from the shield of being a Mercedes fan, right? Let's look at the Abu Dhabi stuff. Let me look at it from the perspective of a neutral fan in here, right? Mercedes as a team won the championship, right? WCC champion title, right? Abu Dhabi affected Lewis, right? Don't let me say 100% sure, but based on the interviews that Lewis has been giving, that the first interview he gave and even the one he gave this past week, right? I can 100% is too harsh. I can 80% say that whatever decision Mercedes made in line with Abu Dhabi could be as a result of what Lewis said.
I completely agree with you. It was a result of what he said.
Exactly. So the person affected has already said, has probably told the team that he would want the champion, he would want to get his 8th championship the right way, right? At that particular point, right, I'm thinking as Toto, right? I'm just thinking as a neutral area, right? They would put down the plug and say, let's see what the regulation would do, the regulatory body would do, right? And Brazil, so I'm advocating for regulation. I'm not also saying that we should circumvent regulatory body, right? Regulations are so super strict. So we breached 0.02 millimeter in Brazil. Let's face the punishment. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying whatever we would have pushed, right? Even if they didn't give us a penalty, right, would have been a card probably like Red Bull will be using now, right? But we follow the due process. I'm of the opinion that let the regulatory body, let them do their work perfectly well, right? Let them have the regulatory book. Let everybody knows that if you do this, you get this penalty, right? And let people get their penalty the right way. So I'm not of the opinion that, oh, we breached 0.02. Let's try to lobby and not get it.
No, but it's not even about so here's the thing. I mean, the commission is not even necessarily about Abu Dhabi, right? Or about the
No,
0.22
based on the example you used.
meter bridge and all of that. It's not necessarily about that. It's just I completely agree with you. But I'm just saying that you get to the point where you're dealing with the regulation. I mean, we've been saying this I think every single time we have a space, we say, the regulatory body has to do better. They have to, they must, you need to hold them accountable. You need to. So I guess I'm playing devil's advocate to say that, okay, so you get to the point where you're dealing with a regulatory body that has refused to hold people accountable, that has refused to, give sporting penalties, has refused to overhaul the rule book. So what do you do?
What do you expect them to do, right? For me, I still feel, right, 100%. It's like, I think there are a few people there that know, like, Abu Dhabi still hurts me personally like this. Anytime I remember about Abu Dhabi, the first
I have
name
nightmares.
the first name that comes to my mind is Michael Massey, and I used to ensure that my mind doesn't send loads of courses to him, right? But this is it. I feel whatever decision Mercedes made will have been a reflection of what the person that was affected told them, right? Which was Lewis, right? So I don't know. I don't have insider information to whatever they discussed in their debrief after everything went down, probably like 3 days or 4 days later. But I think we can make inferences, right, from everywhere what Lewis has been saying, right? Because I still feel that if Lewis had said that they should appeal, right? And you also could agree that Mercedes appeal came, I think, like a day. Mercedes dropped their appeal just like a day to the award ceremony, right? So I still strongly feel, right, if my assumption didn't occur, or probably like Lewis telling them to drop it, right, Mercedes would have pushed to the end, right? But the only reason why they couldn't have pushed, right, if it affected Mercedes World Constructor Championship, it will be a level on World Constructor Championship. I'm so certain that those guys will push it. They will push it. But it did not affect the team. It affected the driver. And the person that affected probably told the team not to push. What would they do? And this is their most successful driver, right? So they will be looking at it from their EQ perspective, their emotional intelligence perspective. Don't let us put a stress on this guy.
I think maybe I need to draw some inference, like, put like a couple of races together last year where I legit saw, and when I mentioned Brazil, I mean on the lap when Lewis was trying to overtake Max, and then Max pushed him all the way out of. I mean, we can argue that Mercedes probably didn't appeal that. Of course, it wouldn't make any sense. You won the race, so what's the need for that, right? But I can clearly remember, like a couple of other races where someone else
also remember the race that Maxi was talking to Horner on the team radios, negotiating what penalty he was
exactly.
Like,
so the entire back and forth.
What do you mean?
So it's not about.
Are you happy to take this as 5 seconds?
Exactly. Or give it back. I think that was Saudi. I think that was either Saudi. So my point is, I completely agree with you, Adebayo. I get what you're coming from. I understand. And like I said, as a Mercedes fan, that's really what I've loved about the team. Like, you're rational. You think about it, and all of that. But I think it also has to get to the point where it's a consistent behavior. And not even to take the conversation to the other side, but I think it's also what has left. I remember last year when Lewis had said, it wasn't up to him. Not about Abu Dhabi, right? I don't remember the race. But had said, it depends on what the team wants to do about it, and all of that. I think you have to get to that point where you put your foot on the ground and say, listen, you gave us or so did something, and you didn't, do your penalties right. I mean, typical example, Christian Horner. He is watching for every. Christian went as much as having Alex Albon reenact the entire Silverstone because he wanted to appeal. So I'm not saying that total has to be the same, but I'm just saying that it's a recurring behavior where maybe a penalty is not given to your opponents, in the way that it should have been, and you just, okay, you know what, you turn a blind eye to it and then you move on. I'm all for it, apply emotional intelligence and all of that, but I think that Mercedes has constantly been on the receiving end. Example, back to the wings issue I mentioned. We have to change the entire thing, which gives us, maybe the secondary aerodynamic effect that we were supposed to get from it. And we don't get as much anymore because XYZ. We just needed to change it so that we don't get in trouble with the FIA. Meanwhile, I gave you the specifications. You agreed. So my point is, we can't keep, how long does Mercedes have to deal with it, apply emotional intelligence, just so that we don't... I agree with you again, but it's just maybe food for thought.
They need to appeal some of these flawed decisions, because that decision when Sergio had 3 coming off the tracks and you only sanctioned him for 1 time and waited to the race end to make sure that your sanction didn't affect. That should have been an appeal.
Because I put it to you, if the tables were turned, and Mercedes was what happened to Mercedes was Haas, right? Mercedes would not. I am pretty confident that Mercedes would not have protested. It was like, okay, it is what it is. Let's move on and talk about to the next race. That's my issue. That's the only problem that I have.
So, lastly.
Well, Adiba, let's hear from Imadi, please. Let's hear.
Just give me 30 seconds. Right. So one of the things I still feel about FIA is the fact that they need to have full-time race control guys, right? Not that you'll be going to every races and you'll be changing, right? So I feel one of the things in which probably our front wing was they didn't allow us to use it last week, was probably those guys that inspected this particular one were not involved in the CFD, didn't even know anything that had occurred between FIA and Mercedes, right? And probably they spotted something that needed a modification that needed to be done, right? In which they feel makes it much compliant, right? But for if a regulatory body, right, if they have structure, if they have proper restructure, if they don't a proper restructure and they have full-time race directors, full-time whatever, that that even if it's just that you be changing you have 5 people and probably 3 people per race, right? But in as much as there will still be one consistent kind of person, right? Then it makes things much easier, right? That is just my honest. So I will still put everything back on the regulatory body. If the regulatory body are doing what they need to do, if they've done what they needed to do, and they are doing it appropriately, there won't be any of this whole argument, right? Yes, if you are going deeper into which teams seems to have the edge in terms of probably in terms of politics, right? If you are going deeper into that, you could say the Red Bull currently, right? You could say the Red Bull has probably overthrown Ferrari, though Ferrari seems to have bigger guys. You could say the Red Bull, right? That is a story for another time, right? But the main focus here is still FIA, because if those guys have done what they needed to do, that race should have ended under safety car. They won't have any of these. At least we all know that a race can end under safety car. Monza showed that, right? So Abu Dhabi should have ended under safety car in the right way, right? And they didn't do it, right? So who do you blame? Do you blame the team that didn't push, or will you blame the regulatory body itself that one of their top guys breached the law, right? It's breached the rule book, rather. So it's the regulatory body. You still pin everything down back. You still recycle it back on, in my own opinion, I feel, right?
Thank you, Adebayo. Imade, do you want to go ahead?
I felt that Adebayo wasn't going to stop talking. Yeah. But Mercedes fans, you guys are actually funny, because, to be honest, I understand your pain and I understand some of the things, and I actually agree with lots of things you guys have said. But I think you guys, sorry, I'm not trying to be insultive, so nobody should please take an offense. But I think you guys try to cry foul a whole lot, because look at it, for example, now, same thing. Aston Martin took their rear wing to the FIA, went through the entire design process with them. It was manufactured, and then the FIA saw the benefits and said it was not in the spirit of the regulation. They didn't intend for this to happen, and it has been banned. So my point is this about this front wing thing that they brought in Austin and is currently and has to be redesigned in Mexico. These things happen. They happen a whole lot. I can remember Ferrari mirror fairings, and I think in 2018 there was something along these lines. They designed it together, they brought it, the FIA okayed it, they suddenly mounted it on the car, and then the FIA banned it. So these kind of things happen a whole lot in Formula One. And it's because there's a different departments analyzing the benefits of these parts that come onto the car when they come, and a different department actually speaking with the design team from the design representatives from each team. So how do you go about this kind of thing? So that's the difference, and the FIA needs to find a way to synergize both teams and make sure those who are going to analyze the benefit, the aerodynamic benefits on track, are the same people who are giving the go-ahead to design it. So as Adebayo said, that is really on the FIA. Yeah, someone has crashed. Sorry. So back to the whole Abu Dhabi thing. I just wanted to say something. I don't know if I'm correcting anyone, but the only reason why Mercedes ultimately didn't go ahead with the protest, to me, I would say it is not. Wow, Charles Leclerc has crashed. I would say it's not Lewis's impute that they shouldn't. It's because the FIA was going to handpick the 3 independent judges ultimately, and that's why FIA felt like suing someone to court, and the person is going to handpick the 3 independent judges. Then what are my chances of winning? So that's why Mercedes ultimately dropped that Abu Dhabi appeal. It's not because of Lewis, because there's a whole lot of prestige and a whole lot of things that's going to come on. Like, well, this guy equaled the 7 world records with us and broke it. So they had everything to gain from that. So it's not about Lewis saying, and for heaven's sake, I think we need to stop all these things saying, oh, I want to win the right way. Obeying the rules is part of winning the right way. So if Massey broke the rules and they knew that they had a very good chance of rectifying it in court, they would have gone that way. But they knew that the FIA was going to handpick those judges. They were going to appoint those judges basically, even though they call them independent judges, well, they're still going to be handpicked by the FIA because there's no senior regulatory body of F1 that's going to be handpicking those judges.
Red flag. Leclerc has binned his car. He binned it. I don't even know. I don't even know how they even still speak the English again. He shall bin the car. Sinaloa style.
He's wrecked the car.
Wrecked the car.
Yeah, just to round up, Bayo, you're number one. You need to keep telling people. You need to stop telling people you're a Mercedes fan. You're actually a Ferrari fan, and it's actually hypocritical of you that you are saying. It's actually hypocritical of you saying Red Bull this, Red Bull that. Red Bull should be punished. I've said that multiple times, but you never called for Ferrari to be punished in 2016. But you were fine with the secret agreement that they did. So yeah. I think I'll end on that. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, admin. I find it so. I just knew you were going to say something very, extremely false, right? Whatever the secret agreement, right, Ferrari had with FIA, right? Did it affect their performance in 2020? Yes, it was clearly visible, right? It was. And thank goodness, right?
Why was the agreement secret? Why was the agreement secret? That's the question. You never called for the FIA's head then. You never called for Ferrari to be this. You never said anything. You were quiet. You were fine. You were fine with it then. So why are you suddenly asking for transparency now? I'm fine with Mercedes fans asking for transparency because they absolutely deserve it. But not a Ferrari fan. No.
Leclerc just been one of my favorite, just being his car, right? So I'm still trying to feel that. But this is
right. When has he not been in his car? Yeah, had his one over here. I am
Hold on,
stupid spasms.
hold on. Right. So this is it, right? If FIA chose to have a secret agreement, right, with Ferrari, right, is it something that should be done in a, like what I was still saying about when you're operating a sport that has the right regulatory system in place? No, it's not, right? Secret agreements shouldn't be something that should be done, right, in that kind of a thing, right? The current, and I'm very sure, right, it's probably based on that precedent, right, that they tried a little bit to at least put some lines, right? Because if you check the report they gave then after they reached the secret agreement with Ferrari, they just left it vague that we've reached whatever, full stop. But this time around, they at least gave some lines that, oh, A to E, at least if you have time, you can check the A to E. If you don't have time, just move on and look at the summary, right? But again, right, is is that still the right thing? No, because I feel like, right, a regulatory body should have like a very transparent rule book, a very transparent way of operation, right? That you already know, all the teams already know, you already know what your punishment is. Not like there will be an avenue where team bosses like Matteo Binotto having to negotiate, or Cristiano having to negotiate, right? That is not the right way in which a regulatory body should operate, in my opinion, right? And I think I've been very consistent with that opinion, right? So I don't know what you're trying to say, right?
I agree with you that they
It's
should.
not me that will be having
I agree with you that the FIA should make everything transparent. My question with you is: it is hypocritical of you, because even up to last week when we were having a discussion in the group,
it's
you
not
were still saying, oh, it was the Ferrari had this, they had this political blah blah. You said a whole lot of things I can't remember right now. So my
what
point is, it is hypocritical of you saying
what
it's hypocritical of it is. Let me finish, please. It's hypocritical of you saying the FIA should be transparent with the Red Bull own and make everything plain when you never called for your team's head. And once again, I agree with everything you said about transparency. So I'm not saying, oh, they shouldn't be transparent. And I feel it's Mercedes fans that you have the moral high ground at this point, not the Ferrari
hold on.
fan who
What I
refused to
told
concede.
what I said then in our discussion, if you remember when we discussed about it, like in like 5, 6, 7 months ago, was no one knows the content of the secret agreement, right? That I think I said no one knows the content of the secret agreement, but would you beat your chest and down and say that it wasn't evident in Ferrari's performance the following season? You can't say that, right? That their the engine supremacy just dropped in 2020 from 2019, right? You can't say that, right? And that was the whole point, right? That FIA never released a much detailed punishment, or a more detailed document detailing the punishment, right? So we can't really make appropriate comment than looking it at the fact that they cheated, and they had a secret deal, right? And I've always been saying, right, that the whole process is more transparent. Let it be clear to all teams that if you do this, this is your punishment. There will be no need for any form of negotiations by drivers. There will be no need of any form of negotiations by teams. There will be no need of any conspiracy theories by weak fans trying to see all sorts that doesn't exist, when we all know that this is what the rule book says about this kind of scenario, which FIA has not done, right?
Once again, as I said, I agree with everything you said as regards transparency of the FIA. I'm just saying, from your own point of view, is hypocritical. You're calling out Red Bull and the FIA when you never did that when it came to Ferrari. That's my point.
I'm not a Ferrari fan.
You are clearly a Ferrari fan, for heaven's sake, dude.
Wait, let's hear from
Hold on.
others, please. Sharon, do you want to go ahead? Ridwan will come. Oh, she's gone down.
It didn't affect.
Ridwan, do you want to go ahead, please?
Okay. So, Adebayo, first of all, For me personally, I know you as a Ferrari fan, and you will be a Ferrari fan to me. You are not a Mercedes fan at all. To me, you have been a Ferrari fan, and you always be a Ferrari fan. So that's just it. That's it. So the thing is that, like, I want to ask you that it has been long I've seen Mattia, like it has been long I've seen that man. So, like, is it right? Like today, it just came to my mind that, like, it has been long I've seen. So, thing about this transparency or no transparency or anything, it just stood down to the FI, to be honest. Like, seriously, to be honest, it just stood down to them. So the thing is just that, like, so the FI, they just need to, like, have the regulation. So that's just it. They need to have the regulation. And to be honest, I feel like normally Mercedes will surely, you are just actually blaming Toto. You're actually just blaming. I don't think normally, yes, it's not by runs, but I feel like they should be reporting, like, reporting director also. And it's at Red Bull
Ridwan,
now that I know about. In Red Bull now, we have Jonathan Wick. Like anything that comes to, like, to dealing with, to go and beat the FIA and stuff, it's not Christian that should be there. It will surely be Jonathan. That's just it. That's what they do. But to be honest, like, it's just like a football team. All those lies to the coach, not even it's those around him. It is the coach that they surely blame. So I feel like it's like you just blame Toto, like maybe you just give me slack. So I just like, so Toto, I feel it's businessman, business, you know. Yeah, like, to be honest, he hasn't been like, in Formula One now. I think it has been long he has been in Formula One, but he came with the business-minded man into Formula One. But Christian,
that's not why we're here. That's not why we're here.
so okay, sorry.
Oh, sorry. It's not you I was talking to. I was talking to somebody else. I didn't even know my mic was on mute. Sorry.
Okay,
Please
so
carry on, please.
okay, so, like, Toto came into this sport as a business-minded man. Like, he came into this sport as a business-minded man. But Christian has been in this sport, I think, as a driver. Yes, he drove when he was young, and he knew about Formula One from the get-go. Like, this man has knew about everything. He knows, like, we can always say, like, this lobbying of a team. To be honest, lobbying is not right, because we are just saying that Toto is just being, like, he's just keeping quiet. Let's not lie. At the beginning of the season, these guys wanted the new regulations to be changed because it is causing porpoising. It's affecting his team. And because Red Bull got it right, did not get it right. They actually wanted it. They actually pushed for, like, we all knew what happened during the summer break. Mercedes actually pushed for a new regulation, like, they should actually change the regulations to actually allow them to lift the car up. That was when the FIA actually said that it's either, I'm not sure if it is correct, because I actually had this, that it's either you lift your car up, if it continues to porpoise, you have to lift your car up. And surely it surely affects Mercedes. That's just it. And this flexi floor of it, who brought it up? It was Toto that brought it up in the paddock. I brought flexi floor, and we knew actually what's happened. And the thing is that right now everybody is on Mercedes, everybody is on Red Bull's neck, because yes, we did cheat, and yes, that's fine. But this flexi floor of it is a technical regulation that some things breached, that we actually, to be honest, it shows in Mercedes performance. It shows in Ferrari's performance. The flexi floor.
Ridwan, they say you are lying, Ridwan. According to Thanos, he said you are lying.
I was about to call Ridwan out on, the entire purport thing when he mentioned Mercedes pushed for it. And I was going to answer it with like a simple question. Do you really think that if all the other teams didn't have the same issue, I mean, aside Red Bull, because there are conversations that even during the drivers' conference, a lot of the drivers had spoken out, Ferrari, a couple of other, drivers had spoken out to say, listen, this porpoising is really bad. So my question is, do you really think that if other teams